Yeah, I should win just because you had the Timberwolves in the 8th seed.
Vasilevsky's been playing really well, and the Lightning have a great offense.
Yeah, it was a tremendous shot, and I've come to expect it from LeBron, who's become one of the clutchest players in NBA history as of recently.
So I have him going off one night, but I think he's just going to get tired. So that's why the Nets winning in 5.
I would say I wish the best for the Red Sox, but as a Yankees fan, that's really hard for me to do.
The biggest addition to me is Jalen Brunson.
Both teams that beat the Rangers are rebuilding faster than the Rangers.
Why'd you have to name them? Like, seriously. Thanks, man. To me, those top 2 starters are Lucas Gaelito and Lance Flynn.
Kaprizov and the rest of this crew. Jordan Greenway, who doesn't get enough props. He definitely is somebody who needs to be mentioned more. I definitely think it's going to be a great series, and I'm interested to see how much Kaprizov can impact the game as a rookie.
How is Joe Burrow going to get the ball to them if his butt is already on the ground when he finally decides who to throw to?
Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, and that's all I have to say. He's still a top 5 quarterback in this league, and there's nothing really anyone can do about it.
All I could think of was Dame.
I don't think they will. If they don't have Anthony Davis, I'm saying it right now, if Anthony Davis is out for the playoffs, they don't make it out of the first round.
And then I want to talk about the Fernando Tatis extension, because that really surprised me. Because he's so young.
The Hurricanes just have too much. They're probably the most complete team this year, and I anticipate them winning.
You know what this means, Bengals. Take the nice one. Do not let what happened to Andrew Luck happen to Joe Burrow.
Clippers versus the Nets. Who would have thought 5 years ago that the Clippers and Nets would be facing in the finals?
But I have the Sixers versus Jazz.
Crazy. And for the fans at home, for the listeners at home.
Hello, I'm Cy Mendenhall, and you're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NFL Opinions of the Week. Today we will be reviewing another episode where we did predictions. Our predictions for this episode come from episode 96 about playoff teams or not and how this impacted the coaches. So playoffs or bust. One team, which is the Raiders, was on here, but we're not going to review them because John Gruden was fired for other reasons than missing the playoffs, as we've already talked about that before. So the teams that we will review are Cardinals, Vikings, Broncos, Cowboys. This is probably the most well-predicted video, Austin, because we were 100%.
Yep. So. We could not have done better than this.
Yeah, 100%. It's hard to beat 100%. Unless you get some extra credit, but we don't really have extra credit in this. We can in the future episodes if we do this again. But let's start with the Cardinals. Cliff Kingsbury made it to the playoffs. They had an incredible season till they had a downturn in the second half. And then they lost in the playoffs, but they got to the playoffs. And he just got extended till 2027. I'm a little surprised they extended him, given how bad his second half was. But we'll see how it is, and we'll see what he does next season. But he did it. So any thoughts you noticed, or any thoughts on this Cardinals team?
Not many. I did not expect the length of extension that Cliff Kingsbury gotten, but I do think he deserved at least one more year under the helm because he did make the playoffs for the first time in a minute.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It would be interesting to see how Cliff Kingsbury if he's able to resolve the issues with Kyler Murray, as he's been writing out letters and all that, expressing his disconcern with the team and wanting a new contract. But we can move on to that. Now we go on to the Vikings. Mike Zimmer did not make the playoffs, and he was fired. And it makes sense. He had been there for a while. And I think his best season as a head coach with the Vikings was probably that 2017 NFC Championship game. Just how far he got, even though the players, they didn't show up for the game. They got blown out by the Eagles. But I understand why they moved on, and I probably will have made the same decision.
Yeah, he needed to leave. I thought the Vikings were much better on talent than they showed, and that's what costed him his job.
Yeah, And now we'll move on to the Raiders. Or never mind. Sorry, I misread it. Now we'll go on to the Broncos. Pretty obvious. They had QB problems. It may not all be Vic Fangio, but he wasn't helping at all. So I see why they moved on. And it'll be interesting to see what they do next year with QB, because you do have Nathaniel Hackett. So maybe there are hints of Aaron Rodgers, but really did not work out. It was a questionable hire to begin with because, in my opinion, Fangio did well at defense, but going against the grain when teams are moving through offense, especially the two teams in the Super Bowl had offensive head coaches, and Sean McVay has really started that trend. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I 100% agree. This is definitely something we saw coming, and I don't really blame Bridgewater either. It didn't seem like they had a good offensive game plan to start out. The offensive coordinator was not doing his job. Vic Fangio was not doing his job. So I agree with the firing, and while I don't necessarily think every team needs to have an offensive head coach, if you're going to have a defensive head coach, you need to have a good offensive coordinator like the Bills have, or like the Patriots have had for a while with Josh McDaniels.
Yeah. Now we'll go on to the Cowboys. They did make the playoffs. Even though they have made questionable decisions in the playoff game, Mike McCarthy's job is safe for now. Any thoughts on this?
I agree that he should have been brought back. I understand many Cowboys fans were disappointed by their short stint in the playoffs, but you got to start somewhere. And last year they didn't make it after not making it the year before either. So their team is improving, and we'll see what they move from here. The next year is going to be insanely important for not only their development, but what happens as a head coach moving forward.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention it. The Amari Cooper news is very annoying because I do not think you have right now. I do not think you have a wide receiver that can replace Amari Cooper's production. So I don't see. I know there's money that's involved, but to me, it's worth it because there is not a proven number one wide receiver, and I don't see using that money to pay Gallup, Wilson, and Schultz. It just doesn't. To me, I would rather have Cooper than Wilson, Gallup, and Schultz together, and just all the money that it takes. And I do agree it's going to be a big year for McCarthy. That's when he's on the hot seat. I think you don't have to just make the playoffs. You have to make a statement in the playoffs, or at least get to a championship game or a divisional round game and play well. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on the Amari Cooper situation.
I just think they should let go of Gallup, let Gallup walk. He's already hurt, and I feel like that's the safest thing to do. Bring back Amari Cooper, and if he doesn't have a good season this year, then you can talk about moving on from him.
I'm gonna push back on what I think you give. I think it'd be beneficial for Gallup to take a 1 year deal, to see if he can maximize his 1 year and then hit free agency next year, and because it's a pretty loaded market on wide receivers, and I would probably let Wilson walk because I think Wilson's asking price is gonna be pretty high, and I think it would hurt, but I'd let Schultz walk too because you do have Jarwin, even though he's dealt with injuries, but I just cannot move off Cooper because when Cooper was out, you saw a difference between the offense, and Dak is much better with Cooper, and we've seen that ever since we made the trade for Cooper.
Yeah, you're much more ingrained in the Cowboys culture and knowing what is best for the team. I think that you bring back Wilson, get rid of Gallup, but because I think that's monetarily speaking the best thing to do. But we'll see what they do and how it affects their chances at moving past the first round, which they have not done in a very long time.
Yes, they have not. Any other thoughts before we conclude this one? It's a little short. We're just reviewing, but Kingsbury, I think, is safe next season. I do not think McCarthy is safe next season. Thoughts on that?
I agree. We also should mention that Zach Taylor is completely safe this year, just to throw it out there. It does not matter if they literally go lose every game. He's safe. He just brought the Bengals back to a place that they have not been in a very long time. So there is no way that he is gone. Other teams that have underperformed. You could say the Steelers underperformed last year. Now that maybe because the offensive coordinator just did not do what I thought he should have. I don't blame Ben Roethlisberger, but there's no way Tomlin leaves. If the Patriots miss the playoffs, Bill Belichick isn't leaving. Raiders, they just hired a new head coach. I don't see them moving off a guy after year one. The Eagles made the playoffs last year, so even if they fall out this year, I think their head coach is safe. Giants just hired a new head coach. I think Ron Rivera is on the hot seat. Not necessarily have to make the playoffs, but you have to show improvement. Now, there were a lot of injuries that happened. I do not blame Ron Rivera whatsoever for Ryan Fitzpatrick getting hurt, Chase Young getting hurt, and everything that happened on the team. But you could really see the locker room issues that happened on the field as we saw in that Cowboys game. So I'm not saying he's on the hot seat, but he has to show improvement and see that this team is moving in the right direction, especially if they go with the young QB.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. We'll definitely continue doing this because I really like looking at how we predicted this very well, as we said. Very impressed with it. So that concludes our review. Thank you for listening, and be on the lookout for more episodes from Outsiders Opinions.